Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Podcast. Stories by leaders for leaders to help you raise the bar on your own excellence, to release the potential inside of you. Now, here's today's podcast. Greetings, it's Hugh Ballou and Russell Dennis again for the Nonprofit Exchange. And as usual, we have a very, very intriguing guest on this episode. Barry Auchettl from just south of Brisbane, Australia. And it's called the Gold Coast, Barry?
It's called the Gold Coast here. It's where the Commonwealth Games were held just recently.
Oh yeah. And Russell's in Denver, and we're having a good time, and we're having to accommodate the time because our normal time for Barry would be in the middle of the night. He likes us, but he doesn't like us that well. So we're accommodating. So Barry, I put a little dangler out there about Barry Auchettl. We're going to talk about conversations today. We'll just leave that hanging for a minute, but tell people who Barry is.
Okay. Hi, Hugh. Hi, Russell. Look, great to meet you guys again. And look, my background's quite varied. I've got a very varied background. I started off as an accountant, actually, for Price Waterhouse. So I sort of worked through the lines of there for a few years and recognised that accounting really wasn't my thing. But it gave me a great background into business and in how businesses work. And I decided then I really wanted to go teaching. There was an innate call in me to teach. And I ended up teaching for about 15 years. And my areas of expertise were actually accounting, computers, and religious education, of all things. I've also got a background in a theology degree as well. So I've got a business degree, I've got a theology degree, and I've got a master's in education. So it sort of keeps me quite busy. And about 1997, it actually happened. I left teaching in 97 to set up my own business called iPower, which has now been operating for 21 years. And iPower is about improving people's physical eyesight, but it also looks at people's vision of life and how the two are connected. And that's really what I've been working with in a whole variety of fashions since 97.
Now, conversations is the topic of this interview. And conversations is technically a game, but it's a game with a purpose. So what was the inspiration for developing? And it's pretty intricate and complex. It's easy to play, but you can tell there's a lot of psychology, philosophy, thought underneath the principles here. So what was your inspiration for creating this? It's really a tool.
It's really a communication tool for connecting people. That's what it is, and transforming relationships. The origin of the game is really quite fascinating because as much as I have a teaching background and I was helping groups, and by that stage I was helping adults and supporting adults, I was recognizing that people weren't communicating properly. But I had no intention this is way back in 2001. And all I did is I went to bed one night really frustrated because my work wasn't taking off as much as I wanted to. You know, when you're a startup business and things are really slow. And I was really frustrated one night and I went, what is going on here? You know, and that was the G-rated version. You know, I was just really frustrated. And I went to sleep that night and I literally had a dream about the conversations game that night. And I had all these things I had to get done. And in the next 3 days, I put together the conversations game. And to this day, I don't know how, but all the other things got done as well. And I don't remember doing anything else. I just remember working on doing the very basics of the conversations game. And within 2 weeks, Neil Donald Walsh, who's Conversations with God and founder of Humanity's Team, the not-for-profit organisation there, played the game and really endorsed it. He just said, this is fantastic. You've got to get this out there.
You need to bring it to America. We're not talking to each other.
Look, I've been really lucky. I've had the fortune of going around the world, and by and large, people are the same. That's the one thing I have found around the world is when we take out our politics and take out our different religions, underneath all of that, we're just really wanting to connect to each other and be kind and look after our families and have a good life. You know, like it's almost the basic processes. And what I found that the game does, and I've played it with people, I've had 10 countries play it once on Zoom, where we had 10 countries played it, you know, one time. And it was a fascinating experience to see that we're all really, you know, this experience that we're all one, we're all having the same issues, the same concepts, the same desires, the same wishes.
It's fascinating, isn't it? So give us some couple of examples of here's what was going on. People were not connecting. They did
Yep.
the game, and then on the other end, what happened?
Look, one of the very early ones that just comes to mind is it was the first birthday of Conversations, and I decided to have an open house and invite people around. And I had this one person walk in, and she was from a really fundamental, strict religious background. And she was like, you know, really making sure that there was going to be nothing spooky going on or anything like that, because it was, you know, was going to affect her religious beliefs. And I said, look, just welcome, you know, have a seat, have a cuppa, you'll be right, you know, and I just eased her into it. The next person walked in, the very next person that walked in, I said, welcome, you know, welcome to the game. Would you like a cup of tea before we start? And she literally looked up to the sky and said, yes, my angels told me I can have a cup of tea.
Oh,
And
wow.
I went, wow, this is going to be an interesting game, isn't it? It was almost the two extremes in terms of beliefs that you could get, you know? And this is going back, this is way back. This is back in the mid 2000s. And this is a 1 year release when I actually printed the game in 2005. So back in 2006. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen here? You know, like, how are these people going to get on? And what happens is a miracle. I believe is a miracle. I've played this game over 1,000 times. And the miracle was not only did I not have an argument, because I could see that they're different viewpoints and whatever, but somehow the game drew out of them what was similar. So much so that not only did they not have an argument, they exchanged phone numbers and became friends. And that to me showed me the potential then of what could happen with the game.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
I guess people need to come to the game with an open mind and a willingness just to talk.
That's right. And just be open. And the game is sort of designed in a way that people talk as deep as they're comfortable with. And the idea is to slightly extend people's comfort zone, not to push them out of their comfort zone. So, you know, let's extend ourselves and let's see how we go. And a really good example is I received 2 emails once, and one was from a grandfather and one was his granddaughter. And they both actually sent me a letter to thank me because they had their first ever real conversation with each other.
Huh. You've
You
played
know,
it.
like we talk to each other, we be family, and we give all the roles, I guess, especially as a grandparent or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And they actually talk to each other as 2 human beings having a conversation.
And Barry, that's the big gap in all of our systems. We're talking to leaders that are running religious institutions, membership organizations, cause-based charities, community foundations. We're talking to people that have a very tight network of people gathered around a particular philosophy. That doesn't mean they talk to each other.
Yes.
In the church in America, you know, the mainline denominations, there's a little bit of revitalization energy going on, but we've lost a lot of members. And part of it is this whole thing is we come and we sit, we don't interact, and we go home. And we just don't talk to each other in meaningful ways.
Sure.
So can we play a little bit of this game with you and Russell?
Sure. Look, I think that's going to be the easiest thing. I've got to, like, the game normally goes between 1 and 2 hours, but we can do a 10-minute demo, and that'll give you guys and it'll give everyone listening a chance to get a feel of what this is about. Because, you know, I guess there's a little bit of intrigue. Like, Russell hasn't played it. I can see he's almost intrigued there already, aren't you, Russell?
He's intrigued. Okay, Russ, you ready? You willing to do this?
I'm ready to rock and roll.
Okay. The game itself, just as an outline, the game itself has 3 cycles. It has an aspect cycle, which is an aspect of life, and that might be career or health or something like that. Then we look at a life card cycle, which I nearly call the drama card, you know, the poor me, it's someone else's fault, all that stuff. And that was the easy part for me to do. And then we have the inspiration cycle, which is to step out of that. All right. And that's really what the game is about, is that whole inspiration of how do we move forward. And the purpose of the game, just before we play here, I want to take up your point about communication.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe real authentic communication is a two-way process. One is we need to be able to speak and feel safe speaking, authentically speak, and know that we're not going to be criticized. So part of this game is when someone speaks, no one comments on them. So they get to speak without anyone saying that was a good answer, a bad answer, or why don't you do this, or try to fix someone or something like that. So there's no fixing allowed in this game. In actual fact, we only use I statements. That's part of the game. We only use I statements. There's no we all need to do this, or there's no you need to do this. It's for me, I might choose to meditate more or do something. So that's the first part. The second part of the game, and it's really an important aspect, and I used to call it active listening, about really listening to each other. And I've shifted that in the last 6 months because I've done some work with the nonviolent communication and empathic communication work. And I really believe now it is about empathic listening. You know, it's not just listening to the words, it's listening to what's behind the words. And when we can do that and really tune in and get a feel for what the person's about and have some empathy for the person and have some empathy for yourself, you can then relate what's being said to yourself. And that part the game creates that. The final part of the game that I can't create, but the game somehow magically does that, is to create an openness and a connection with all those who play. Because somehow by people having a physical card in their hand gives them permission to open up. It just seems to do that. And when we do that, we recognize that we are similar.
Wow.
So with that sort of real introduction, I'm going to start the game with us. You guys ready?
Drum roll, please.
Okay. So we're going to go through each cycle, and we're just going to keep it really short. So we're going to keep our answers down to a minute, just to allow our 10-minute idea that I suggested. We're going to get this done in 10 minutes. And so the first part of the cycle is we choose an aspect. And so Hugh, because you've played first, I'm going to choose an aspect for you. And these are all so-called random. I don't believe in random, but the aspect I've got for you, Hugh, is fame and glory.
Fame and glory.
And I'll give you one of the dot points. And the dot point here is see yourself as equal to others.
Okay.
So would you like to comment on what fame and glory means for you? And I guess in context with not-for-profit organisations.
And seeing myself equal with others, was that the other part?
That's the point that came up for you, yes.
Well, part of how I perceive that is that I like this statement, nobody's perfect, but parts of me are excellent. And so there's parts of me that are really good. And I focus on those, and I just take it in stride. Other people value it and say, oh, that's really good. And it's part of who I am, and it's my way of giving to other people. And so fame and glory for me is just focusing on what I do really well and maximizing that gift, that space that I give to others.
Okay, thank you. And part of that is, you know, everyone playing can relate to that. I mean, I can say I'm nodding, I can see Russell nodding as well. And I'm sure this will also relate to all the people listening. So it's interesting how this game, you know, it's for one person, but can expand to everyone. And that's the amazing part. Russell, I've got a card for you, and your card is rest and relaxation. And the dot point, I'm just going to give, there's 4 dot points with each of these cards to help people with their answer, but I'm just going to give you one of them. And the one I want you to comment on is allow the soul time to recuperate.
Rest and relaxation. I'm a firm believer that for me, it's important to raise my level of consciousness, whatever I'm facing. And that is what fuels me and gives me energy to go out and try to make a difference in the world. And in order to give, I believe we live in a reciprocal universe. So I have to recharge my batteries from time to time so that I'm able to serve at a high level and give to other people. So for me, what's restful and relaxing is my meditation practice that I do daily. It's a chance for me to shut down, notice what's going on within me, and to look at my day and just not attach myself to anything, whether it's good or bad, but just to notice where I'm at and to carve a space of supreme gratitude so that I can continue to serve and recharge. And so part of that rest and relaxation is turning the squirrel cage off and sensing that connection to the universe.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Russ. I really want to honour you for just coming out and sharing that with us. And first games, you really sort of jumped into it. That's awesome. And I'm sort of amazed of how close the answers can be too as we get these. So I'm just going to choose mine just to round the first cycle off. And the card that I've got is humour. And so that's a really good one here. And I'm going to read the very first point. And the very first point says, it's only a game. I think it's a really good one for me. You know, like sometimes I can take myself so seriously. You know, we're playing this conversations game and it's a very serious game and we're going to go deep and we better not smile because, you know, all those sort of serious. And I think it's really important for me always to remember to bring humor. You know, when I educate people, when I do my training, you know, I do a 6-month mentoring training. I run training around the world and I just have to use humor as part of that because otherwise I get bored, you know, and it just, I think it's a great way when people laugh, we learn. And I have a really big belief we can go deep and laugh at the same time. It's not a choice. So really interesting 3 cards. We've got fame and glory, rest and relaxation, and humor coming up for the 3 of us. So really interesting combinations. So that's the first cycle, and people go around, and if we've got time at the end, which we won't do today, we could look at where the interactions are between each of those aspects, which are it's really quite interesting in itself.
How many people can do this at one time?
Look, the game has 16 aspects, so I normally run small groups between 2 and 32 people because 32 you can pair people up and do things like that. I've actually played with 300 people at a conference where they had me play with the entire audience. So, you know, it is possible to play the game with large groups and you just do it differently as part of the facilitation process I've done with this and with an educational background. I've been able to create a whole variety of ways of playing the game. So, you know, it can be used as, you know, I've used it in, well, it was used in a 300-seat auditorium in New Zealand, and they got me in to be the entertainment at half time to connect people. So that was sort of done that way.
Sweet.
Let's continue. Let's continue. We'll go into our life cycle now. So the life cycle, as I said, Nelly called this a drama cycle. And normally we each would get a turn, by the way, if it's a small group. In a large group, we obviously couldn't. Today, we're just going to choose 1 card as an example. And Russell, I'm going to let you're choosing the card for us. So you get to get the card. So all you need to do is just, I'll read the card out and just say, what does it mean for you? And what does it mean in terms of your aspect? And then I'm just going to get you to invite only one of us to speak.
Okay.
Because one of the things you learn in this game is you don't always have to speak about everything all the time. And for some people, that's a really good learning process, you know, like, oh, I don't have to say something. So I'm going to let you choose whether Hugh talks about fame and glory from this card or I talk about humour from that viewpoint. But what I want you to do is just say, what does this card mean to you? And what does it mean in terms of rest and relaxation? That's all you need to do at this point.
Okay.
And you don't have to agree with the card either. You can disagree with it. These aren't stone tablets, so you can disagree with them. Okay, and the card says, I find it difficult to love myself.
What that means to me is that person doesn't really recognize how exceptional they are. So Hugh, what does that card mean to you?
I don't have difficulty with that, as my standards are pretty low. I accept myself. I actually criticize myself heavily, but judging my performance and loving myself, I've been able to think of in different ways. So part of fame and glory, in Barry, I get to conduct an orchestra this season. And so that's very public. And in my little community, that's part of fame and glory. And I'm up there, and everybody, of course, when you're in front, they're going to judge you. But I've gotten to a place where I just do what I do and celebrate it because I know somebody's going to like it. And that means being comfortable in loving myself. So it's a journey of saying, okay, I'm going to let go of the flaws and love myself just how I am. And that's part of personal empowerment for me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Russell, it was your card. Did you want to make any other comments before we move on?
Well, I think that's an interesting card. A lot of people may or may not choose to look at that. It's really something that's important to look at, though, as far as rules around what rules we set for ourselves for living. I love it. I love this. This is really deep, and you know, of course, the way to really solve things is to look within myself and start there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we would do in a game is I would probably call you in a real game to say use I statements rather than we all need to do this or we do this, to go back to, for me, this means, you know, like it really is a key concept in this game to keep coming back to self, you know, and then the rest of us go, oh yeah, I can relate to that as well, because my own personal journey is I'm a little bit stubborn. When anyone tells me what to do, I tend to do the opposite anyway, just to
well, people don't want to be told what's wrong. So,
no,
you know,
no, it's even like meditation. You know, like you said, you know, like if you say, oh, we all need to meditate, it's like, oh yeah, sure. But when you say I meditate every day, I go, yeah, look, I can relate to that because you know that's what I'm doing well, or you know maybe I need to do that wherever it is. So it gives people permission to come on board without being in a request rather than being demanded to come on board. And so I think that's a really important process. All right, we're going to keep this fairly quick. We're going to move to the inspiration cycle. Russell, I'm going to start with you again first. And the inspiration's about, we'll just get you to make maybe just one sentence about this. We're going to keep this fairly short for each of us to give us an idea. But this is sort of moving it up to a higher level after the life card shows us the drama in the aspect. This takes us to another place. So your card says, what would happen if everyone did this?
I believe that if everybody did this, that there'd be an increase in the level of collective consciousness for all the people that participate.
Awesome, thank you. And my card says, give to another whatever you choose to have for yourself. And it's really interesting because I've been doing a mentoring program, and as I support other people in stepping up, and it is about raising their consciousness as well, and I work with raising consciousness and frequency, as I'm helping them to raise their consciousness and frequency, my consciousness and frequency increases as well. And it just comes back to me. So I think it's a great card for me. And Hugh, your card is interesting one. Affirmations work better when they are about something that is already true for you.
At 72 years old, I'm finding that there's anything that I do, there's still room for growth. And so working on the skills I have, my top skills, makes them better. the ones that are down the ladder a little bit, I don't need to mess with those. I want to focus on affirming who I am and what I do. So focusing on what I am makes it better, and that my top skills makes them continue to grow.
Awesome. Thank you. And that's sort of a really quick version. We've gone, a little, maybe about 15 minutes into that, but we could have discussed that a little bit further with each other, a bit similar to cycle 2. We could ask each other about that, but it gives us a bit of a feel for what this is about. And just before we continue with the interview, I just want to complete the game properly. Hugh, can you just say, what did you personally get out of the game? Just maybe in one sentence for yourself. What did you find out about yourself from this game?
Absolutely. It made me think about myself in ways that I would not normally do. And I felt a little vulnerable, but it felt safe.
Great. Thank you. Russell?
I love this game. I think it's wonderful. And the thing that I notice, I have to be very careful because of the circles I run around in. I run into a lot of like-minded people, and my language in general is inclusive. But I have to be very careful to come from the place of talking from within my own experience, so that I'm not putting anybody on the spot, but being more inviting for them to relate in a way that's comfortable for them.
Thank you. That's wonderful insights. And look, for me, as I said, I've played this game over 1,000 times, and I just don't get bored because I always learn something about myself. This is really a workshop in a box that you get, and you get to play a workshop every time. And the key one for me, I think, is what was my inspiration card as a reminder, as I'm of service to others. That comes back to me, and I am recognizing my life is really amazing at the moment. I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my life, and I'm serving people more I ever have. So the two fit hand in hand. So that's pretty cool. So that's sort of a nutshell, Hugh, of the game, and Russell. So congratulations, Russell, of completing your first demo, and Hugh, you've played this a number of times now. So
It's always different, Barry. It seems to always be different for me. And it's like you go to a museum and you see a great work of art. It's different every time you look at it. There's more depth to it.
Yeah. And that's so true for me. I do get bored pretty easily, in life. And I've done a whole lot of different things. And this is something that I do not know a game where I played that I was bored, because you're always learning, especially, I can play a whole game now and just listen to people talk and go, wow, and it's just fascinating to not to have to be the speaker and just let people talk about what's happening and how it relates to me. I mean, I can relate to both of what you said, Hugh, and you, Russell, in terms of my own life.
Well, I'm sorry, Russ, go ahead.
The one aspect of this is this never gets old, because every time you sit down with it, you're in a different place. And I think the dynamics of solving very real human problems requires me, there I go again, lesson learned, requires me to look at where I'm at and to constantly evaluate how I can do that and how I communicate with other people. It's all dynamic.
Yep. And where I started with that, Russell, was with my own family. That was the first place I played the game. And it really connected my own family. And I can remember, my children were only teenagers at the time, and both boys, the older boys, were really quite talented and, all sorts of things. Even as teenagers, they were setting up international businesses, that entrepreneurial skill. And my daughter said, how can I be like you guys, or something like that. And they turned around during the game and just said how amazing they thought that she was, and just what a life she's got ahead of her, and her gifts and her talents. And it just really opened up on a heart base to each other. And my daughter's now having an engagement party here in Australia next month, and the two boys are flying from America and from England just to be at her engagement party, just to support her. And it's really connected them together, for life, I believe.
What I've experienced that's different than normal interactions is that being a musician, I've worked on my listening ability my whole life. We need to be very intentional about listening, and your pivot from active listening to empathetic listening, I believe I heard the word. There's a willingness to understand the intent behind this. And so it's a whole different paradigm. Where has that been very helpful in games where people have been at odds? Where's that perspective been helpful?
I think it's helpful when we recognize that we have different language, and so it is about stepping in. And sometimes we can get caught on the words, and I know for corporate and some organizations, like one of the aspects is unconditional love. And sometimes I've got a corporate edition which actually calls it unconditional acceptance. And I've recognized that sometimes it's just our language that holds us back in the words that we use. And if we can go behind the words and get a feeling for what's going on, we're not going to get caught in the language. And that's the same, when we use words, especially words that can have a charge, like, when we talk about love, or we use a word like God, or universe or spirit, people have different ways of, expressing that, and just allowing and accepting of that ultimately we're referring to the same thing. The energy behind it is what's important.
Well, we have nonprofits and religious institutions, cause-based charities attract people around a cause. And we have passion for the cause, but it doesn't mean that we know how to interact around how we work together.
Sure.
And I think there's a big gap. We spend time texting, and we spend time on the cell phone. We spend time emailing and doing things on our computer and posting on social media. We're not really having a conversation where we are listening and where we're claiming the I statements. So I think this takes us out of all of those routines and has a face-to-face relationship. And so I see in nonprofits, there's a lot of important work for us to do, because government shouldn't be doing some of the stuff they're trying to do. It's creating conflict. Nonprofits can come in and have a neutral place and do some healing and do some philanthropic work that we're cut out to do. That would necessitate us being, I call it a new architecture of engagement. How do we show up as this fine-tuned music ensemble that we're in there and we're actually working together? So there's a special place, I think, for nonprofits in this communication area. How do you see communication playing there?
I want to make a comment about that, because I actually used to work for a project called Living for Harmony in Australia, and it was about bringing all the different cultures together and recognizing, how can we get on together rather than being separate. And that was a project that was really about bringing people together, people from the streets right through to politicians, coming together and just being open and honest with each other. And obviously the game was part of that process of connecting people, of having a deeper conversation. It's been played in church groups, it's been played for not-for-profit groups, it's been played for corporations, it's been played for schools, and it's been played at university levels. And it's really whenever we need to have a greater conversation. And I believe, especially when we're talking about not-for-profit, because a lot of people for not-for-profit come in and volunteer their time because there's a higher purpose to why they're doing it. And in return, sometimes all they want to do is to be heard. They want to have a voice and say, you matter. What you're doing is important to us. So, we're hearing you, we're listening to you, and that you are important.
Well, so what are you thinking there?
Well, I think that's very critical, of being able to get support for the mission for nonprofits, because you got so many different audiences that you're talking to, and some of them are internal. That's your staff, your board, your volunteers, or servant leaders, as we like to call them. There's the community that you work in. There are the various people that support you, whether it's through corporate sponsorship or they give you grants, individual donors. So it's really important to talk to people in terms that are meaningful to them without losing who you are. And so having a good conversation is critical to that. And it's difficult to find that language where it works for everyone, so that there's no misunderstanding. And it's what it's all about. That's how you bring people into the fold, or the way that I feel you bring people into the fold is that you connect with them at a deep level, so that you're working toward the same things, and you have that deep understanding. And it's the ability to put what needs to be done ahead of my own individual goals for the greater good. So it's really important to have good conversations around how you do that.
Definitely. Yeah, well spoken.
And the whole shift in paradigm, Barry, it takes us out of feeling like we've got to have the answer to something, to the place where we're exploring what the answers could be.
Mm.
And one of the religious writers I read is Richard Rohr, R-O-H-R, and he's very eloquent in talking about non-dual thinking. We want it to be good or bad, left or right, up and down, debit, credit. And really, there's a third way. There's a different way, multiple different ways. So instead of being dualistic, let's talk about the other options. And part of this, do you experience when people are playing the game that there's times of silence where there's some profound things going on without words?
It's been really quite interesting, because it's the realization. And I'll give you two examples of this, because part of the game, when we say don't interrupt people, is I also allow people an opportunity when they pull a card to sit with it for a while, because sometimes it can have a really profound effect. And part of the magic of the game is not only do they get a card, but even in the game we play, we seem to get the exact cards that we need on the day. It just seems to happen that way. And we've had two cases. One case I remember, a guy got personal growth and spirituality. And there was a group of about 20 people. And he actually threw the card on the ground and he said, I don't want to play. And it was really good because no one in the group reacted. And they just looked at me and I was like, what are you going to do? And I just said, it's your choice. We're not going to force you to do anything here. Do what you feel comfortable with. And he said, but I want to stay. And I said, all right. And I thought about it, and it was sort of like a choice of, well, what's he going to do to the group? And I thought, no, you can stay. It just felt like he needed to stay. And he stayed, and we got about halfway through, and we had a break, and we started playing the second half of the game. And I said, any questions? And he puts his hand up, and he said, Barry, can I play again? And I said, sure. I said, your card's on the ground there, exactly where you left it. If you want to go and pick it up. Spoken like a true teacher. And he went and picked the card up. And I said, who wants to go next? And his hand went straight back up again. I want to go next. And he pulled a card. And what came up is that he'd had been burnt a little bit through his own spiritual life and walked away from it. And this night was the time that he came back to it. And he recognized that he couldn't run away from it anymore. And it was an amazing process where it was in the silence of no one trying to fix him and allowing him to make that choice to return to the game, to return to his own spiritual life, that created a change in him. And that was quite remarkable. And since I did get humour, I did have another one. I got another lady got food once. And the two people almost walked out. She got food. And she got, oh, no, I shouldn't get food. I should have got personal growth and spirituality or unconditional love. Or I got food, I should have been something more important than that. That's what she was saying. I don't want to play. And I said, look, that's fine. Why do people keep asking permission, So she got up to leave. And she got to the door. And at the door, she turned around and she looked at the group, and the light bulb moment. And she said, maybe it's because I had an operation on my stomach last month. And the entire group just started laughing. The connection was so strong. And it made her laugh, and recognise that that was what was important to her. In actual fact, of all the aspects, food has the biggest charge for people because it's like how we relate to food or don't relate to food and use it as an emotional crutch and all sorts of things. So, those sort of scenarios, show me that the power of what's behind the game more than what I do, or even more than what the game does. There's almost like its own energy that runs with it.
And there's a shift for me. We're in a high performance culture, no matter where you live. We're expected to do things. And
Sure.
we can shift from being human doings to human beings and, live in the moment and be in touch with parts of us that we haven't been in touch with in a while.
Totally. And, my greatest gift for me, and I'm really grateful, is the fact that I get to do this all the time. I get to open up and I get to see and witness people opening up. And the two biggest groups I get to witness, one is the person who's really quiet and doesn't say anything. And will normally get a card and say, I don't normally speak and I don't know what to say, but if I had to say something, and then they just give out this wisdom. And then the other one is the person, and you might know these people as well, the ones that talk all the time. And they come up to me at the end and they say, it was great that I didn't have to have an answer for everything. And I learned that I can actually be quiet. Because part of their thinking process is they have to have an answer for everything that's said.
Isn't that funny? We've imposed that on ourselves. We have to fill every minute with talking, and we have to have answers for everything.
Sure.
And I keep seeing celebrities being interviewed, and the interviewer wants to trick them and ask them these hard questions, and they stumble with the answers. And I'm thinking, why do you try to answer? Just say next question. I'm not answering that.
The questions haven't been too bad.
Oh my.
I've been trying for myself to operate out of the philosophy that it's no accident or design that I've got 2 ears and only 1 mouth.
Yes.
And so my best bet is to try to, at minimum, use them proportionately.
Funny. So Barry, if people wanted to find out about this Conversations game, what's a URL they can go to?
Look, the easiest one is conversationsthegame.com and .au for Australia. So it's conversationsthegame.com.au.
Conversations is the name of the game, and then you say the game.com or .au.
.com.au.
Oh, .com.au.
Yes.
Got to have them both.
Have them both. We have a .com because it's relating to my business, and .au because it's Australia.
Whoa! We'll put that in the notes, and so people can go there. We like to keep these interviews under an hour, and I think we've given people a huge amount of value today. And is there it's a physical game? Is there a virtual version of this game?
Look, one of the things we're looking at, and I went to CEO Space, as you know, Hugh, and part of what I'm looking at is to create an online version. I do play online with people like we do here, and my goal is to create an online version to connect people around the world so that people can start creating relationships and building friendships and building connections with people around the world. So a number of things coming up. One is that the Conversations Online is a project that if you go to the website, there's some information on that if people are interested being part of it. And the other one is the Conversations documentaries, where we video full games and allow people to express who they really are. Because one of the things I recognise is sometimes when people have been doing a lot of media, they almost have a script for answers, and you don't get to know who's the person behind the script. And I think people would be really interested to know who are some of the celebrities of who they are behind the scripts. And I think some of these people would be more than open to say, we've had to work through this ourselves. So, some of the new thought leaders would say, well, we just didn't get here. We've had to come from somewhere, and we've had to work through this process. So the documentaries will be there to support that. And we're going to start those in Australia as early as this year. So, but there's information on both of those on the website. There's information for people who want to be facilitators of the game. You can get a game now and play it with your family and friends. If you want to play it as part of larger groups, there's processes I do to help people with that. And I'm really here just to help you in whatever way, you know, for your organization, whatever that is, to get that moving and to get your people talking to each other, to get the people who they work with talking with each other, getting their families talking with each other.
I'm going to give a message for our sponsor. We do these because we have sponsors that support our work. And then we'll come back to you to close it up. And Russell, if you have a closing comment, but Barry, to leave people with, you know, what's a wish, what's a thought, what's a tip, what's the final statement you want to leave with people? Our sponsor for this one is Rock Paper Simple, rockpapersimple.com. It's not just a web company. It's not just a marketing company. It's not just a branding company. It's letting people know about your brilliance online. So the new centervisionleadership.org site was built by Rock Paper Simple, and it just launched last night, as a matter of fact, guys. So Rock Paper Simple /Hugh, H-U-G-H. There's special offers for people that want to take advantage of the brilliance of Joshua Adams and his team. So Russell, before we give it to Barry to give our final thought, what would you like to say to Barry or to us?
Well, Barry, thank you for the work you've done to create this. I'm pretty excited about it, and it's something I want to look into, because in my conversations with people, the one thing I want to highlight is that they had all sorts of brilliance already. And I'd love to help people tap into that brilliance, because they've got a lot of their own answers. So I ask a lot of questions, and this is a remarkable tool that can help enhance that process. So thank you very much for the work you're doing, and I look forward to interacting with you more in the future.
The same here, Russell. It's been great to meet you. And my wish for the game, I'm going to put my big wish here for the game. And my real desire, I know when I created the game, the dream was actually more than the game. That part of the dream, there was a grassroots approach to get the game out there. So it wasn't a Mattel toy that you buy in the shop and things like that. It was people supporting people, supporting people. So my wish is that this game is in every family. Every family gets the opportunity to play it. That every church has it available in the church to help its congregations. Every not-for-profit organisation has it to help support the volunteers and the amazing work that people does. I want every corporation to have it, to have a game, so that we create a new way of doing business with each other. And I want schools to have it so the kids know that they're safe and can talk to each other as well. And that's my real wish. And I know I can't do that alone. I know it has to be a grassroots. And, you know, if there's people out there that want to be part of this and help with that process, you know, we've already got 100 facilitators around the world, and we haven't built up America yet. So, you know, there's a whole opportunity there to look at that as well, if people want to support that process of making a difference in the way we relate to each other. And I just want to thank you, Russell, and you, Hugh, for the opportunity today to show people just how amazing this game is, because I really feel I'm a custodian for this game. Having come through a dream, I feel that sort of sense of responsibility to nurture it and to get it out there to the world.
Barry, you're an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing with the nonprofit community on the Nonprofit Exchange.
Thanks, Hugh, and thanks again.